back to Japan last November, we exchanged some few phrases like, "Hey, how are you doing?" when I went back to my home, and he came back. He was busy like working. He came back. We exchanged like few words, nothing much. That's kind of like depth of relationship. Like the reason being, you might be wondering, what the fuck? Is that like how son and a dad's relationship is like in Japan? It's different. It's special. My dad and I were not on good terms because in high school I had a lot of argument with my dad as well as my mom, but especially with my dad. It's kind of like Japanese traditional family relationship is kind of like patriarchy, right? Dad is like boss. It's called in Japanese it's called teishu kanpaku. Teishu means like dad, and dad is the top of the hierarchy. And so basically he was typical teishu kanpaku. He loves reading classic Japanese novels about Bushido and stuff like that. He was like avid reader, so he absorbs those traditional Japanese ideology and whatnot. He doesn't speak English. My mom did study abroad in Australia, so she understands English, and we do actually communicate in English sometimes. So that's where dad's coming from, right? And then, so typically, not just Japanese, but East Asian men and also Eastern European men have a commonality when it comes to how they behave in front of people. They think that being quiet, less talkative, is higher value for men. So there's a belief in traditional Japanese culture that men should be quiet and men should not expose his own emotions. More emotions are considered to be more weak. So that's why a lot of Eastern European, especially like Russian kind of guys, are acting like a macho, and they act like tough guy, and they don't show much emotions, right? Same as the Japanese, Asian guys. So my dad was a typical one. So always he puts like serious face, and it was so rare to be able to communicate at the same level, flat level, because that wasn't part of our cultural beliefs. So that's that, right? And then me as a kid, and also other dynamics is that usually same kind of thing as how men behave in Asia, but also hierarchical relationship, power dynamics. It's top down. It's not bottoms up. It's not flat hierarchy like in Western parenting. So Japan, Asia, China, always parents hold power against kids. So my dad was also like CEO, right? He was pretty successful at the time, and he was driving Mercedes, BMW, all that stuff, right? And so you can imagine how much pride he had back then. So stuff, right? And so you can imagine how much pride he had back then. So created a lot of distance between like teishu kanpaku dad and the kids, especially his son. So that was that basic background and context. It was a virtue for men to act distant and aloof and quiet and less emotionally available. That was a virtue in Japan, or China too as well, Eastern Europe. So it wasn't so friendly relationship with my dad. And so and then another thing happened, and then our relationship I pretty much cut it out because it was toxic, and I basically lost trust in him as a person. Not even before dad, but as a person, I couldn't respect him. And so a lot of stuff happened about like smoking and like taking money from my saving account from an otoshidama kind of thing, because they think they own us. They think they own our life because they're providing us food and house and whatnot. So that's kind of typical mindset for them. So I think for him, it was okay to take out money without asking me. And I realized, like, I learned about it like a few years after from my mom, like, hey, like I wanted to withdraw money from my account, which my mom, like my parents are managing. So I didn't know how much was in, but I think I remember it was like about $1,000, from Otoshidama. And apparently my dad took it out without even telling me or without asking me. That at that time I was a high school student, right? And I was becoming more and more independent. And that, and also smoking, even if he was basically ignoring my request for him to smoke outside the house in the car, because I hated the smell of the smoke inside the house. This is typical in Japan. People in Japan smoke inside a restaurant, inside a car, inside a house. And my dad was heavy smoker, my mom was too, and they still smoke inside. So that created a huge emotional, turmoil between us. And the last thing was basically I just realized that he isn't the person who would square up face to face with me, his son, as a guy, right? And then tell me about his true feelings or his true thoughts. He couldn't communicate that with me about taking money from my saving account, or a little like he had like he was facing he was facing financial issues at the time, like when I was a high school student, like grade 11, 12, and that's the reason why we moved to a different house. And then after that, I ended up studying abroad at the Canadian University, but because of my parents' financial situation, I couldn't borrow money from my parents, so I pretty much paid everything. I funded everything by myself, and also from Japanese government, and also from my uncle. So that led to that, stuff, me becoming more and more independent and amazing problem solver. But the origin of all the things that happened afterward was because my parents, not my parents, but my dad's financial issue, that he did not communicate to me at all. And that to me was just deal breaker. For a guy, or for a parent, for a dad to not be able to talk. I think he was ashamed. He lost his pride because he was, before and after, his personality completely changed because he wouldn't be able to hold his own ground. He lost his frame. All the frame was backed up by the fact that he was making money, he was CEO, and he was controlling, he was in charge, and now he was suddenly facing financial issues, and he lost his confidence. And I think that's a whole thing I saw before and after. And also, it didn't matter to me much about how successful he was financially. All I wanted was, more emotional connectivity, relatability. But he wasn't emotionally available. He didn't explain to me. He didn't spend effort to communicate with me. And that to me was disrespectful. As a man, he couldn't even, talk out loud, be honest about it. What he did was opposite of what he should have done, which is hide, pretend, cover up, the stuff. And then I heard all the stories from my mom, and my mom told me that she tried to talk him into telling me, but according to her, my dad didn't want to talk about that to kids because, it's traditional patriarchy and a hierarchical structure and not so close, emotionally connectedness kind of thing, all played in the whole thing. And so that's how our relationship has been. And basically, I lost respect to him, and I don't respect him as a person to begin with because he was disrespecting somebody's rights about, breathing clear air. Every single day he was pretty much harassing, and he pretty much neglecting my wants and my desire. And that to me was just like, who cares? Like, fuck that, So as a person, I couldn't respect him anymore, and I realized how adults are adults are not as we think as they are. We sometimes fantasize or think that idealize that adults or parents are perfect. They're not. And I had more critical thinking than other people in my age already back then, So I had a lot of critical thoughts, logical thoughts, and I was arguing with them, but they couldn't really, they just couldn't. Their emotional maturity wasn't there. I realized that when I was already only 17 or 18. Emotional maturity of my mom and dad was less than mine. I clearly saw that they're trying to manipulate and trying to control me with their own power. And they got emotional and they lied to me and stuff like that. I was like, fuck that. That's not what, my perception of adults or parents should be. And then at the point I learned from those, my parents about what I wouldn't do to my kids. I developed a kind of emotional intelligence about how people react in certain situations. And, I learned about some stuff. And so that's my relationship with my dad has been. And that's why I haven't talked to him for like a long time. And this is, I don't think, not that rare when it comes to Japanese parent and son's relationship, because they're kind of distant. It's different from Chinese or Koreans or Vietnamese. Japanese relationship with kids or parents are a little bit distant. They like to be indifferent. They like to have their own space. And on top of that, our case is a little more complicated, so that led to this now. But I have forgiven him. I have forgiven him for what he has done. And I think everybody is not perfect. And I learned from that, and I can forgive him now. I can forgive him now, and I can take him to an Olympic baseball game or whatever. And as a matter of fact, I bought my dad and my mom a birthday gift, which is a bath powder so that they can relax in the bathtub. First time I bought a gift to my dad in past 10 years. I started buying, birthday gift to my mom last year. So this is second time from me to my mom. But it was first time for me to my dad this year. So that's it, guys. Thank you guys for watching. If you think that why you guys are not talking at all? I get that question all the time from different people from different countries, because their habits and customs are that they talk to their mom and dad almost every day or every week. It's not so close when it comes to Japanese family. And sometimes I have trouble explaining why, because other Asian families are different. Like Chinese, helicopter parents, micromanaging parents, right? Japanese parents are not that micromanaging, not helicopter parents, like, with, punishing with a bamboo stick. That's Chinese, Some Japanese used to do that. I don't think right now, So that's that. Thank you guys for watching. If you have any, thoughts, inputs, comments below, with that said, I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye-bye.